Hey, it's René Banglesdorf, CEO of Charlie Bravo Aviation, here to talk to you about how to save money on your next airplane. I'll go over a few basic housekeeping items as we start the webinar today. First, you should be able to view the panel on the side that has a question block. If you have a question, please type it in here as you think of it, and I'll get to as many of these as I can at the end of the webinar. Secondly, at the end of the webinar, I'll be talking about a program with more than $25,000 in free resources. You're not going to want to miss that. So let's get to this. I'm always interested in what highly successful people think, and I like to start my presentations with things they've said. Today is no exception. This quote is from Bill Gates. "The airplane became the first World Wide Web, bringing people, languages, ideas, and values together." But this begs the question, why is that really important? I think the chairman of Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Andrew Taylor, puts it in perspective. Using business aircraft allows us to visit 3 and 4 cities in a single day. And Warren Buffett drives the point home. In business, as in life, you're just not as likely to see eye to eye if you're not face to face. If you're a wise business person, you likely know you could benefit from private aviation. But you also recognize that there are lots of ways to lose money with private jets. I'm going to spend the next 30 or so minutes telling you how I've saved my clients millions of dollars, sometimes in a single transaction, and how you can use some of those secrets for yourself. Many of them apply no matter what size aircraft or transaction you're talking about. So who is this webinar for? This is for people who are not professional aircraft buyers. It's for people who don't have time to deal with mistakes, either theirs or those of their team. It's for people who don't want to make a costly mistake by missing a step buying an airplane. At your age, I guarantee you don't want an airplane like this. This is great for preschoolers, but not so great otherwise. This webinar is for people who want to maximize their budget and not just spend money like it's growing on trees. What we found here at Charlie Bravo over the years is we've helped hundreds of clients. The ones who end up with the best deals are the ones who ask questions, those most eager to learn, not the ones who are know-it-alls to begin with. So here's what's possible if you ask the right questions. You can anticipate pitfalls ahead of time. You have the confidence to put a team together you feel really has your best interest at heart. And by knowing what you're doing, you can save a ton of money. First, I'd like to introduce my company. Charlie Bravo Aviation is an aircraft broker and dealer based in Austin, Texas. We do transactions all over the world. We've done hundreds of transactions over the years involving clients in 40 or more countries. We have experience in aircrafts of all types and sizes, ranging from helicopters and turboprops to large jets. I won't say that we're the most experienced brokers in the entire world, because there are guys still doing this who are selling airplanes when the first business jets were introduced in the 60s. But I will say we have a young, innovative outlook. We are progressive with the way that we do things, and we've come up with great results for our clients. We maintain an extensive network of professionals around the world, other brokers, service centers, operators, attorneys, banks, etc. And here's a little more about who I am. As I mentioned when I started the webinar, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Charlie Bravo Aviation. I'm also the Vice President for Business Aviation for the International Aviation Women's Association, and I maintain an active role in NBAA, the National Air Transportation Association's President's Council, the National Aircraft Finance Association, and Women Presidents Organization. I got involved in aviation by marriage. My husband's father was a pilot for Nationwide Insurance most of his career. And as a result, I have come to really love this industry, the business of it, and what private aviation can do for businesses and influencers. But my first love is journalism. I went to school to be a journalist. I love stories. I love quotes, as you already found out, and I love to write. Last year, I combined my love of business and journalism and wrote a book called Crushing Mediocrity, based on some lessons from my life and some amazing people I've met along the way. One of my friends who's a podcaster interviewed me after I wrote the book, and he said, "So what are you going to do to crush mediocrity, Renee? What's that one big area where you're putting your money where your mouth is?" I had some ideas already, but I accepted that challenge and said, you know what? I'm going to create a way that more people can buy private airplanes without getting fleeced, without losing money inadvertently, especially for the people buying smaller planes or just getting started in private aviation. So we're here on this webinar today because I accepted that challenge. So let's get into the meat of the presentation. Today's topics for saving thousands, even millions of dollars on private aviation has 3 main areas of concentration. And there are a bunch of tips under each one of these topics. The first one is choosing the right plane. The second one is building the right team. And the third one is developing the right plan. We're going to go over all of these today. I promise in this webinar that I'm going to give you as many tips as I can in this limited amount of time. I will answer questions at the end. So again, if you would like to type those in the sidebar at the right, I'll look at all of them as they're coming in, and then I'll answer those at the end of the webinar. And then I'm going to give you an opportunity at the end of the webinar to get more in-depth help with our brand new Clear Skies program. Because VFR is much easier than cloudy skies, right? There are a couple of recurrent problems that I see, and these are the reasons that I put together this webinar. And that's that you may know the benefits of owning and operating a private plane, how much it can help you grow your business or expand your sphere of influence, but you could overspend if you don't know what you're doing, and I've seen that happen a lot. Or you're already wasting enough time on commercial aviation and you don't want to waste even more time trying to get up to speed on what's available from a private aviation standpoint. You've looked for but haven't been able to find a single access point, a one-stop resource for knowing what you're doing, and that's what we're working on here. There are a couple of different scenarios that we see from a research perspective when people are buying a plane. One thing that people do is they have a pilot or a friend help them. The next thing people may do is assign a project to a CFO, an attorney, or a special projects manager in their business. And the third thing we see people typically do is conducting all of the research themselves. This can become incredibly tedious. The downfalls can be that your pilot does not necessarily know the markets or the sales process. He knows a lot about planes, and he may make a great decision for you on a plane, but he's not going to know some of the pitfalls that can come along with an aircraft purchase, some of the legal ramifications, the tax scenarios, and really what might be a better aircraft in the long run. Your CFO or attorney or special project manager may know how to manage transactions, but not know a lot about planes. When you're doing your own research, you may fail to consider some minor detail like the runway limitations of your favorite destination. You may or may not want to pay a broker who can help you, or you may hire the wrong one and end up in even more trouble. It is possible to have someone guide you through all of the necessary steps. But isn't it better to make sure you know all the steps yourself? I've been doing this for 15 years, and there are still a number of experts I call on for advice. Tax codes change, laws change, international transactions have complications. There are no hard and fast templates for an aircraft transaction, but there are steps you need to follow to make sure all the questions were anticipated. For instance, I was working on a deal earlier this year where the buyer's advisor, and I use advisor loosely, didn't have the right connection to get a best case avionics upgrade quote, and the deal almost fell apart over that. He didn't know what the international registry was or if the bank would require it, and he didn't know that he needed to address the sales or use tax issue before closing. Even though I represented the seller, I had to educate the buyer and his advisor along the way. You have to know the right questions, and that's where we're going. In choosing the right plane, here's some areas where I see people making mistakes that can end up costing them a lot of money. The first is you need to choose the right aircraft for your mission. Markets have changed significantly. So where you used to spend $2 million on only a light jet and an older one at that, Now you can buy any size aircraft for $2 million. So you need to make sure that you're buying the right plane for where you're flying, who you're flying, when you're flying, and why you're flying. There are a lot of choices out there. A few months ago, I was at a speaking engagement in South Florida. Afterwards, I was chatting with a broker there. I asked him what he was looking for, and he told me he was looking for a Falcon 50 that he could put on a charter certificate. I asked him why he was looking at a Falcon 50. He said, well, I need something with a really comfortable cabin that's just a workhorse getting people places. I said, well, there aren't a lot of Falcon 50s in that price range anymore that don't need a lot of maintenance work. But have you considered a Citation 3 or a Citation 7? Those aircraft weren't even on his radar, and he's a broker. There are a number of choices that can accomplish the same mission. There are a number of choices within every budget, and you need to take all of those choices into consideration along with their operating budgets. You also need to think about depreciation. Yes, you can get bonus depreciation here in the United States on a new plane right now, but the values of new aircraft are falling pretty rapidly post-sale. So you probably want to take both aspects of depreciation into consideration. Tip number 2 is that you really want to understand true market values. Keep in mind, most people look at controller.com when they're looking for a plane. And if the prices are even listed, they reflect asking prices. There are no places that sales prices are published anywhere. Those are kept proprietary, usually by a confidentiality clause in the contract. And so you may or may not know what similar planes are being sold for. The only way to really know those is by following the market carefully over time. There are a lot of variables that go into a true value, like total time, damage history, and upcoming maintenance that can cause an aircraft to be worth more or less, even when you are comparing the same year models. Demand can shift a market pretty quickly. For instance, if 10 Gulfstream 450s sell in a single quarter, the ones left on the market are suddenly more scarce, and scarcity often raises prices. But ultimately, a plane's worth what a buyer will pay for it and what a seller will take for it. The third thing in choosing the right plane is that pedigree is more important than aesthetics. You can always change the paint and interior of the plane. You cannot change the maintenance history. If a plane has shoddy maintenance history, you may have problems. You might have problems now. You might have problems when you go to resell it. It's important to know how many owners that a plane's had and be able to look back and see that the title is clear. Then the third thing I would look at is foreign history. For instance, look at the picture of this airplane right here with a palm tree. Now, that's a lovely place to take a plane, but if the airplane was based at a location with high humidity and high temperatures, a lot of times that can be a corrosive environment, and that can cause early problems with the aircraft. So knowing where the aircraft has been maintained, under what standards it's been maintained, if everything's been done to have the aircraft in the country that you want to take it into, all of these things are important when you're looking at the foreign history of the plane. The pedigree of the plane is more important than the nice seats or even the Wi-Fi that's already been installed. Moving on to building your team, my first tip here addresses a place where I see people spend thousands and thousands of dollars unnecessarily. That's in making a bad choice on legal counsel. Pilots are not attorneys, brokers are not attorneys, and we all agree you may need to get some legal representation in some aspects of buying a plane. One thing that's really important is if that attorney has aviation experience. You definitely don't want them to be trying to figure out how to manage your deal or aspects of your deal on your dime. You want them to already know the questions that need to be asked and the things that need to be addressed. Another thing you want to make sure that your legal counsel has is aviation tax knowledge. This can be incredibly complex. You can spend a lot of money on taking care of taxes in arrears, or you can handle the planning for that at the front end. The other thing I would advise, and I did write a blog about this recently, is check the references of your attorney. Talk to a couple of people that he or she has worked with and ask up front how much it will cost for your transaction. That's a great way to save money in the long run. Those hours sure add up. Next, in building the right team, don't let technical people make financial decisions. Complex transactions require specialties. Technical people can look at all the different aspects of a plane and make sure that it's safe, but they can't necessarily make sound financial decisions as far as direct operating costs or annual budget or tax planning, etc. So make sure you're getting the right advice from the right people. When in doubt, second opinions do help. Then, we see this a lot with aircraft owners who are not owner-operators, that they end up with more avionics upgrades or other upgrades than they need because their advisor likes that particular upgrade, or in some cases is getting a kickback for installing it. Next, and this is a big deal, you need to know what to expect from a pre-purchase inspection. I put a mirror in here because of an early experience in an inspection that we had. Our buyer, who is a Vietnam vet with a ton of aviation experience, showed up with a mirror and a flashlight. He ruled out 2 airplanes in 20 minutes just by looking at logbooks and wheel well corrosion. After that, we did a full inspection on the one he thought passed his initial test. It's important to define discrepancies and who's going to pay for them in the purchase agreement. A lot of times, we'll include in the purchase agreement that the service center is going to determine whether a squawk is airworthy or not. If someone has a discrepancy with what the service center says, we refer back to the maintenance manual, but it's important to define those things. Also, anticipating upcoming maintenance is critical. I met someone a few years ago who, when he bought a smaller Citation, didn't realize that it had about $700,000 worth of maintenance coming due. And so he got into $1 million plane for just under $1 million. But then once he did all of the maintenance, he was way upside down in that plane. And I don't mean in barrel rolls either. The next thing I'd say about pre-purchase inspections is that the logbook review might be the most important item in the purchase inspection. Obviously, you're going to look at that plane and make sure everything works. But if the logbooks are not in order, the plane is worth a lot less, like 50% less, depending on the extent of the missing data. This is especially true if the aircraft has been serviced outside of the country, as it will limit your ability to get an airworthiness certificate. Now we're moving on to developing the right plan. My 7th tip today is that you need to do your tax planning before your purchase. We talked a little bit about this earlier, but it's worth a second glance. You need to know the local laws. Is there a personal property tax? Is there a sales tax flyaway exemption that you want to take advantage of? Does that mean you're paying use tax instead when you bring it back to your local base? Here in Texas, for instance, it's really important to have your sale for resale certificate before you take delivery of the aircraft, so you're paying use tax on that aircraft instead of sales tax. Again, understanding the local laws covering that tax plan before you make a purchase is really important. You also need to understand reporting the use of your aircraft accurately for accounting and tax purposes, especially if you let others use your plane. Next, you need to make sure you're doing business with someone reputable in managing your aircraft. If you're having a pilot manage your plane, you need to talk with other people who've used that pilot in the past as well. Does that person have enough experience with the plane type, or are they learning as they go? If it's a larger management company, do they submit to third-party audits? Those can give peace of mind for sure. Lastly, you really need to count all the costs before you charter your plane to others. We hear a lot of people say, oh, I'm going to buy a plane and I'll charter it out and I'll recoup all my costs and I'm even going to make money chartering the plane out. And that really just isn't the case. It will offset some of your fixed expenses, but then increased hours also mean more maintenance. Keep in mind that if other people are using your plane, they may not be as careful with the interior and the paint of your aircraft as you are. So you're going to have more wear, which means that you probably are going to be refurbishing sooner. So if you're chartering your plane, understand the terms of the management contract and what percentage you'll be receiving. I covered a lot of information here, but I feel like I barely scratched the tip of the iceberg because there are so many different things that can cost you money or where you can save money with your aircraft purchase and subsequent ownership. That's really why I came up with this concept called the Clear Skies course. I mentioned it a little earlier, and I'm going to talk about it now. Disclaimer here, I'm in a little bit of trouble because I showed this to the team in my office and they said, you're going to work us right out of a job because you're essentially teaching people how to be a great aircraft broker. There's some truth to that. In the course, I take you through all the steps and let you know what to do to buy the plane effectively. So what is the Clear Skies course? It's an online resource in a go-at-your-own-pace format, so you can click in and out of the lessons whenever you want. If you need to know about 1031 exchanges or Wi-Fi upgrades today, it's at your fingertips. It's always available. You can log on anywhere. It's set up for responsive websites, so you can even watch it on your phone waiting in the grocery store line. When you enroll, you will know what you don't know. You definitely will save money, much more than you invest in the program. You will have reliable resources at your fingertips, with more being released as members request them. And if you decide to use Charlie Bravo to acquire or sell an aircraft for you, you can apply the enrollment cost to the acquisition or listing fee. What does it look like? Inside the Clear Skies course, and I'll give you a quick tour in a minute, you're going to see that we have 6 different modules, and each one of those talks about a different aspect of the buying process. In each module, we have video lessons. There are a total of 28 lessons in the course, and each module contains a varying number of lessons. Some of them, I guess about half of them, are video presentations by me, and about half of them are interviews with experts. Because, as I mentioned before, I've been doing this for a long time, but I still don't know everything about all the regulations and banking requirements and airworthiness directives. And besides, it's always interesting to get other people's perspective on things as well. Just so you can kind of see what this looks like, Module 1 is about the aviation plan. We're going to assess your mission. We're going to assess your budget with a pretty cool calculator. We're going to talk about where your mission and budget meet. We're going to talk about your aviation plan options. And that's all of the options up to and including buying an aircraft. I go through everything from fractional programs and jet cards to Wheels Up, Jet Smarter, and some regional programs in Texas, California, Colorado, and Europe. Plus, we're going to go over what to watch for in charter if you're chartering an aircraft. You can see in each lesson there are audio and transcript choices if you're not a video learner. And each lesson is noted with the playing time so you can plan ahead. In Module 2, we're going to break down the costs and financing. So in this module, we'll estimate fixed annual costs and teach you how to calculate those along with your direct operating costs. We'll look at offsetting costs with charter. We'll talk about financing and leasing options. And then we'll talk about what goes into financing an aircraft. Some of these things have changed in recent years, so I have expert input in this section. In Module 3, we're going to talk about making the right offer on the right plane. So obviously, we're going to look at your aircraft selection, the pros and cons of buying new or pre-owned. And finally, we'll review good offer parameters. I break down everything I put into an offer when I put one together for a client. In Module 4, we take those terms even further and talk about creating and negotiating the purchase agreement. We discuss what to look for in the pre-purchase inspection with one of the best independent shops in the nation. We talk about choosing the right location for the pre-purchase inspection. And again, I talk about all the questions you should ask your attorney before you choose one. Module 5 is probably the most robust module. In this, we talk about legal structure for purchasing aircraft. We talk about tax planning, and both of those are with an attorney I respect who has nearly 30 years of experience as an attorney and as a pilot. We talk about using a 1031 exchange for tax purposes, We talk about aviation insurance. Then I do a deep dive on choosing your management company and how that might change if you're planning to allow charter on your aircraft. In Module 6, we talk about closing and what it means to use an escrow agent for that process. I'll discuss upgrades to your aircraft. We talk about others' use of your plane and how you can get in trouble with that. Then we talk about ongoing maintenance and how that impacts your resale value. We also talk about my video editor and why I look so funny on this page. So anyhow, what's the program worth? We've been told that the program is amazing, and I think it will be worth the investment if you only got a list of tax, legal, operations, and insurance questions to ask, knowing you selected the right plane for your mission, unbiased data, referrals for best-in-class service providers, budgeting tools, or a basic education so you don't sound naive in the boardroom or on the golf course. So what's the investment? $497. But that's not all you get. Inside the resource tab in the course, you'll have access to 50 or more quarterly market reports. We update those once a quarter based on our world-class research. We have 5 different buyer's guides available for you, and each one of these has a 2-page spread on each aircraft that's available. There are hundreds of jets and turboprops that we cover. You can see the different ones that we have. Then we have a private aviation terms glossary with more than 500 terms that we use in private aviation. We provide a trip cost calculator tool. All these things are worth more than $25,000 a year, and they are available to you anytime in the resources tab of the course. Plus, we'll send you an email as we add more resources. And you get all of this for just $497. I've been told I shouldn't offer it for so little, but my intention isn't to make a lot of money teaching online courses. It is to promote transparency, help people like you who are conscientious buyers or advisors, and get more people flying privately. Furthermore, I really like decisive people. So if you order today, I'll send you an autographed copy of my book, Crushing Mediocrity. I love this quote. Jim Rohn, who died several years ago, was an entrepreneur in the United States who said, if you really want to do something, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse. So here are the top excuses I hear about not buying the course today. I'm not in the market for a plane. Even if you just use the first module to determine which aviation solution is best for you, you'll get your money's worth. Shoot, you can save that on just one charter flight by asking the right questions. Or, I already have a broker I work with, or a pilot, or an advisor, or my landscaper knows somebody. There are lots of trustworthy people in the world. There are some who are knowledgeable about aircraft transactions. In my experience, they aren't always the same. Isn't it worth your while to be forearmed? $500 is a lot of money to invest in a bunch of videos. You know, some aviation attorneys charge up to $600 an hour. Isn't it worth the equivalent of 1 hour of attorney time for 8 hours of videos and thousands of hours of market research to ensure you make the right decisions? Or you may say, I don't have time for training. Well, that's why we design the course in a modular format. You can skip right to the parts most pertinent to you, or you can read through the transcripts. I also had one friend tell me she listened to the videos in 2 times speed. I'm sure my voice sounded like Alvin the Chipmunk, but you know, she likes moving fast. One of the reasons this whole course came about was when Kurt, my husband and business partner, was on the golf course. During the round of 18 holes, someone in his foursome had questions. We ended up evaluating his current aviation solution, NetJets, against aircraft ownership, and he decided to buy a Citation 10. I used his case study to build the foundation for the course. We calculated the cost differences between NetJets and the Citation 10, and I'm going to teach you how to do that in the course. We found the best Citation 10. We arranged for the pre-purchase inspection. We recommended financiers. We supervised the pre-purchase inspection, overcoming issues as they arose. We knew the right questions to ask and the right person to trust. And we got quotes from several management companies helping our client find the best fit. We negotiated a better price and deadline for paint and interior refurbishments. And as we spoke on a daily basis, I noted all of the client's questions. The answers, along with more he didn't need, are included in this Clear Skies course. In the course, all of that information is compacted down into short 5 to 15-minute lessons that you can watch, read, or listen to. So here's how to order. Go to clearskiesclub.com, click the button, pay. You'll have immediate access to the course. If you have questions, you can enter them in the webinar question box or send me an email at renee@wepushtin.com. Okay, great. If there are no questions, please just send me an email if you have any. And if not, thank you so much for listening to our webinar today.